In this video, I'm going to give you 50 excellent pro tips when it comes to driving for Uber and Lyft. These pro tips will allow you to make more money, get higher ratings, and overall have a way better time driving for Uber and driving for Lyft. Some of these might apply to you more than others, and other ones might appear more useful depending on how you drive, when you drive, and a lot of other factors. With all that being said, let's get right into it. Kicking it off with number one, events. These are an insane way to make more money. Now, in case you didn't know, I guess taking a step back, in terms of the peak hours or the best times to drive, most people know this, but in case you didn't know, morning and evening commutes, so 7 to 9 a.m. and 5 to 7 p.m., and then Friday and Saturday nights. That's typically, on average, the best time to drive. We're going to make the most amount of money. That being said, events A can happen on pretty much any night. On a random Wednesday night, there could be a big basketball game, a big concert, like say there's a conference during the day even, graduation, whatever the case is, events can happen anytime during the week. This is a way to maximize your earnings. And B, another big thing is that these can be sometimes higher surges or higher paying than an actual Friday night. You do not want to skip out on events. And I suggest when it comes to looking at both apps, and this is something you're going to notice throughout this entire video, sometimes I'll go to the Uber app and use some of the features, but not even drive for Uber. I might be preferring Lyft at that given moment. And one unique feature within the Uber app is it will show you for that given week the events, whether it's a sport game like a basketball game, baseball games, whatever the case is, concerts, anything happening that they're saying, hey, this is a big event. And if you click that event on the Uber driver app, it will show you the estimated peak time. This is an amazing feature in the Uber driver app where when you click it, and like you see on this basketball game, it might say, hey, this basketball game is going from, I don't know, I'm making numbers up, 7 to 11. I don't know, depending on the time and all that kind of stuff. But it will say, hey, the best time though, the estimated peak time in terms of the best time for you to drive is like say 10 to 11 p.m. For example, I'm just of course making things up here, but this is a really good feature because as you can imagine, when it comes to events, people are going to be ordering a lot of Ubers and Lyfts, going to the event. But I think if anything, usually when it comes to events, the best peak time to drive is usually when it ends. That's when everybody is ordering rides, right? Because as you can imagine, people might get there at different times. Some people might want to get to a bar right next to that event and pregame a bit in the bar and then walk over. Other people might want to get there right at kickoff or right when it's beginning because they're running late. So people will get there at different times. But usually the end of the event, that's also is like another pro tip on top of this. That's when you're going to make the most amount of money because the peaks, the surges are going to be insanely high. Number two, the base adjust. Now, like I said, some of these might appear more in certain ways to you than others or might be more useful to you than other ones. This is a great pro tip, especially if you drive on Friday and Saturday nights. Now, on your car, in terms of the EQing, under the settings, you can turn up the bass or you can turn it down. And what I notice is if I'm driving people to work or from work, I might just have some light music on in the background on Spotify or Pandora, like top 40. Maybe in the morning, some like light jazz, maybe something relaxing. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. But I've noticed on a Friday and Saturday night, when people are going out to the bar, to the club, especially like say whether I'm playing my own music, and in case you didn't know, I'm also a DJ and electronic musician. So I literally mean sometimes my own music. Figured, hey, why not? Maybe get some promotion out there. Someone might hear the song, be like, hey, who's this? And I'm like, oh, this is actually my song. Sometimes it might be a little cheesy. But anyway, what I'll do on a Friday and Saturday night is I'll make sure, whether I'm playing my own music or just doing like EDM, Pandora Station, or EDM on Spotify, whatever, or let's say someone's playing their song, someone in the back wants to play their own music that they want to hear, I will go to the EQ settings on my car and turn up the bass. And when I first started driving, I had a Prius. And I know there's a lot of memes and jokes about the Prius, but don't get me wrong. The Prius actually has a pretty good sound system. And I remember that I would crank up the bass. So when that bass would hit, when let's say people were pre-gaming, they get in my Uber, they're all excited for a crazy night, and that EDM song hits or that hip hop record hits, and the bass is pumping, I cannot tell you how many times people would be like, whoa, you have a good system, or like the base is hitting. And I actually noticed I got higher ratings and more tips as a result. Because think about it, like if you're getting ready to go out, you get into a rideshare, like an Uber or Lyft, you're all excited, you're amped up, your adrenaline's running, you get into a car. I, of course, try to be a bit more higher energy than normal on a Friday and Saturday night. I will talk about this a bit later in this video. But I'll be a bit more higher energy. And I noticed by cranking up the bass, I know it sounds like a very odd and weird pro tip, especially in the beginning of this video, but that alone I like distinctly noticed, especially if it was the right type of crowd. Of course, if it's a bunch of like say older people who are actually just coming back from dinner or going to maybe a very, very late dinner, it's a little different. But if I have a bit of a more rowdier crowd or a younger crowd that's going to a bar or going to a nightclub, having the bass be turned up on my car has actually done more wonders in terms of, like I said, tips, high ratings, and everything, and people having better experience way more than you think. Number 3, 4 a.m. Now, I gotta be honest. I never did this. Does not sound appealing to me at all. However, I know so many drivers that I've interviewed who swear by this, and that is waking up, as it sounds, around 3:30 a.m. to drive at 4 a.m. And I know a lot of drivers have told me this. They're like, hey, one, I'm an early riser. They're like, I'm an early riser. 2, a lot of drivers have said, hey, my typical schedule, especially as you can imagine, from like 4 a.m. till about 10 a.m., you're going to be doing a lot of airport rides. And they say to me that they're like, look, I'd much rather wake up at 3:30. I know it's early. Start driving at 4, and let's say do a 6-hour shift, 4 to 10. From 4 till about 7-ish, you're looking at about mostly airport rides. Then from 7 to 9 or 7 to 10, you're looking at the morning commuting hours. So you're kind of hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. You're really hitting the airport rides, like really, really early airport rides in the morning. And then you transition into then doing the peak hours in the morning. You get done at 10, and you're like, hey, now I have the entire day. And I've had people tell me like, hey, I'd much rather wake up at 3:30, drive from 4 to 10, get done at 10, be done for the day, and I can go to the beach if I want to. I can be outside the entire rest of the day if I want to, rather than, like, say, driving at a different time where, like, say, I'm really cutting into the time during the day and I really want to be outside. And I got to be honest, for me, I never did this. The idea of waking up at 3:30 a.m. to start driving and everything sounds miserable to me. I'm also way more of a night owl, so I feel like, if anything, I'm usually going to bed around, like, 1 or 2, so waking up at 3:30 would not be ideal whatsoever. But I cannot tell you how many people that have told me that, A, they love it way more. They get done at 10 a.m. and they're completely free the rest of the day. But also, 2, the fact that I've had some drivers tell me, hey, you know what? I actually realized that doing a shift from 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. actually makes more money than, like, say, doing 3 hours in the morning commuting, 3 hours in the evening commuting hours during the week, for example. That actually makes more money, 4 a.m. to 10 a.m., than, like, say, 7 to 10, and, like, say, 5 to 8. Number 4, airline terminal list. This is a very useful one. I will say with phones now and technology, this isn't as important, I feel like, as even 10 years ago when I first started driving in around 2014, 2015. But it is a cool thing you can do really quick. And that is this. Print out a list of the given airport in your area, in your city, of all the different airlines and the different terminals. Terminal A has Delta and American. Terminal B has United and Spirit. The list goes on and on. Now, usually, I'd say most of the time, people do know what terminal they're at, whether it's Terminal A or Terminal 1 or whatever the case is. But a lot of times, I have it people, when driving, say, hey, shoot, I'm on American, but do you know if it's Terminal B or is it C? I always forget. Now, as we all know, when it comes to most airports, as you drive in, you cannot think when you look up, and it kind of goes by you as, like, they have the big signs out for, like, what each airline's in and what terminal it's in. But it's not a bad idea, maybe just to have this as, like, almost like a laminated piece of paper, or even just a casual piece of paper in maybe your glove compartment. And you're like, hey, give me a second. You take it out, you hand it to them and say, hey, here's a list of airlines. And they're like, oh, okay, it's Terminal B. Boom. This is just a cool little pro tip just to have. You only have to print this out once. I remember in one Uber, the person laminated it and then hung it over the passenger seat, whether the passenger seat and I think also the driver's seat as well. That way it said, hey, if you're going to the airport, here's all the different terminals and all the corresponding airlines. I don't think you have to go that all out, although I will say that's great customer service. I don't think you have to go that all out, but I will say just having the list of the airlines and the corresponding terminals is great to have. Number 5, window lock. This one can save you a tremendous amount of hassle. And like I said, some of these pro tips relate directly to just making more money, and I will talk about a lot of those throughout this video. Some of these are more tips to make your life easier while driving. And trust me, this is one that might not seem like a big deal at first if you've not driven before, but it's going to save you a lot, especially on Friday and Saturday nights dealing with drunk people, and that is this. When I drive on Friday and Saturday nights, I always have the window lock on. What that means, in case you didn't know what window lock means, is when I press it, no one in the car can roll down their window. Nobody. This seems like a very odd pro tip, like, who cares? Trust me, if you've ever driven on Friday, Saturday night, you know that I don't know why, I don't know why it's a thing, that a lot of people love to roll down their window and just scream out or be obnoxious. And it's annoying, because as the driver, you're obviously not trying to cause tension. People are having a good night. They're not purposely really trying to be malicious. I mean, I guess you never know, but they're not trying to be that malicious. Then again, though, it becomes this odd passive-aggressive thing where I'm like, okay, if someone's screaming out the window, now I have to have a conversation. So now I have to be like, hey, dude, get your head back in the car or stop screaming. And then, like, say I roll up their window. And I've heard of drivers getting into this battle, actually. I've heard about this, where someone then rolls up their window, right? And then the guy's like, why'd the driver roll down my window? Like, or excuse me, roll up my window. Then they roll down the window, they start screaming. Then you're like, then you roll up their window, right? And it becomes a passive-aggressive battle because you want the window to be up. They want it to be down. If window lock is on, which I have it on all the time if I'm driving on a Friday or a Saturday night, what will happen is, and this has happened, someone goes, hey, your window's not rolling down. And then I'll always ask, like, okay, yeah, I actually do have window lock on just because, you know, all people, I kind of make like a very direct joke, like, oh, yeah, you know, sometimes people like to scream out the window on a Friday and Saturday night. I don't know why. Like, why do you want the window rolled down? Sometimes you're like, hey, I just need some fresh air. I'm like, all right, I turn window lock off, then they can use the window. Or other times, they're like, you know, I just kind of, and I can tell they're just kind of like talking in circles, or I can just tell there's really not a good reason for them to roll their window down. So by doing so, by having window lock on, again, this is something that I really wish I knew earlier when it comes to driving, especially driving drunk people around. By having window lock on, it allows you to avoid that passive-aggressive window rolling up and down battle, so to speak. It makes your life way easier. Number 6, phone mount. Pretty straightforward, just get one. I'm so surprised when people don't have one. You can get one on Amazon for like 10 or 15 bucks. I will say, I'll be mentioning a lot of products throughout this video. I have them all listed below in the description in a huge list, so you can easily click the link if you want to get one. I've even seen some at the dollar store. Just get one, even if you don't drive for Uber and Lyft. I mean, I don't get it when I see people driving, even rideshare drivers, which is even crazier to me, and they have the phone in their hand, they do this kind of like head bob motion as they're driving. One, that just seems annoying on your neck, but two, incredibly unsafe. Just get a phone mount. Number 7, set a quota. This is a good way to kind of keep you in check, because I think as a pro and a con, the pro of Uber and Lyft is that it's the closest thing to being your own boss without being your own boss. One con of that, though, is it's the closest thing to being your own boss without being your own boss. And what I mean is that, like, as we all know, it's truly flexible. Lyft and Uber is not going to go after you if you don't do those rides and make that money. And it can be easy to slack off. And I know drivers have different strategies. I've noticed a couple of things. One, some drivers say, hey, I'm going to drive for 6 hours today, regardless of how much I make. Two, some drivers do it by ride. So they say, you know what, I'm going to do, 10 rides today. Regardless of how long or short they are, I'm doing 10. Or 3, which is my favorite, money. For me, that's my personal favorite, that I say, okay, once I hit this quota of like $75 or $100, $150, whatever the quota is for that day that I want to pick, once I hit that, then I can stop driving. And in case you didn't know, both Uber and Lyft has instant cash outs. You can instantly have that money in your bank account. So remember, there were some times where, like, say I'm going out on a Friday night, and I'm like, you know what? I just want maybe like, I don't know, 50, 100 bucks for this night. It's my friend's birthday. I'm going to drive, make 100 bucks, hit that button, instantly have that money in my bank account, and boom, I'm good to go. Now, the good thing as well about the Lyft driver app, which I like, is you can also set a, usually they do it by week. You can also set a weekly quota, and Lyft will actually have like a progress bar, almost like a video game, like a progress bar to show you how close you are to your goal. So like say if you're like, hey, I want to make $500 this week, it'll actually show you, and you can set it up on your own, however you want to do it, as you get to that. So not only do you have to set a quota, like say daily, like, oh, I want to get $100 today, but you can also set it weekly. Once you hit your weekly goal, you're good. Number 8, early drop off. This one is incredible and a massive win-win to optimize your income, especially when it's surging and when you're at something that's super packed. I'm talking, like, say it's a crazy street that's super, super packed. It is a type of situation where, and we've probably all been there, that when you pull into that street, like say it's a big conference, like say it's a big festival, that kind of thing, that it can be a nightmare for you just to leave. Because in case you didn't know, you make the least amount of money not moving. If you're just sitting there and you're just waiting because there's so many cars in front of you, it's just gonna be a nightmare. So here's what you do when it comes to the early drop off. As you approach it, like say there's a street, like I remember this, the Fenway Street in, I can't remember the name of it. Was it Fenway Street in Boston, where there's actually Fenway Park and there's like Lansdowne, all these different bars. Once you pull into that street, it's a nightmare to drive through it. It takes you like 10 minutes because there's so much traffic and blah, blah, blah. So what I do is, as I'm approaching, like say this crazy busy street that I know is gonna eat up a lot of my time, I say to the people in the car, like, hey guys, I'm not gonna lie, this street we're gonna be stuck on for a long time. If you guys want, if it makes it easier for you, I can actually just drop you off at this corner, that way you can walk there and it's faster for you. And the good thing is most people, I see about 80% of the time are like, hey, you know what? That's a great idea. I really appreciate it. And this is a win-win. It's a win for you because you're going to be making way more money by dropping them off and immediately doing another ride. Sitting in that crazy long traffic line of a bunch of cars and everything, once you turn in, once you're boxed in, so to speak, it's going to be a nightmare and you can make very, very little money, especially like say if you want to go out and do another ride. It's also a win for them because they get to the bar sooner. They get to get in line sooner. It's a win-win. I'd say the only exception is like say it's raining. Some people usually say, hey, you know what? It's raining. Yeah, you know what? I don't mind waiting. Or B, like say people can't walk for whatever reason. Like say they have a hard time walking. Like say I have a group of girls with very, very high heels. They might say, yeah, I know it's only a block, but we're wearing heels. We don't mind waiting. In that case, you just got to deal with it, right? But this is a great way to make more money by doing this early drop off. It's a win for them, they get in faster. It's a win for you because by dropping them off, you can immediately pick up another ride, pick up another person or a group of people and continue driving without sitting there and waiting. Number 9, bathroom addresses. A bit of an odd one, but I gotta say it because as we all know, if you're driving a lot, you're gonna have to go to the bathroom, right? And doing so in a city can be a nightmare. I've done some videos about bathroom addresses and pro tips, the best bathrooms in my opinion. I said things like grocery stores, department stores like Target and Walmart, coffee chains, gas stations is probably my favorite because you obviously have to get gas as well when it comes to driving. Hotels can be a bit of a saving grace if you're super desperate. And what I do is, if let's say I find a really good bathroom location in a given area, where let's say this is a really good gas station, and the reason why I suggest gas stations probably over everything is because they always have room to park. I mean, you always have to pull in and get your car there, right? So coffee chains, sometimes parking in the middle of a city can be a nightmare, right? And what I do is, if let's say I find a really good location where I'm like, okay, you know what? This one particular gas station is just the perfect location to stop, run to the bathroom. The bathrooms are clean. They're not out of order. There's multiple maybe, whatever. Like I remember, I think there's one Gulf gas station in Boston near the airport that was perfect. What I do is I put it in my notes app on my phone. I literally have a list of bathroom addresses on my phone that I know are easy parking, easy to go in and out, you know, all this kind of stuff. And as another pro tip on top of that, I might put the code. So let's say it's one Starbucks that's just easy to pull in. There's a great parking lot. I could pull in, run, use the bathroom, come out. I will sometimes put the code in my notes. So I'm like, the code is 27741. That way, when I go in, I don't have to ask them. I just go right to the bathroom, type in that code, and I'm good to go. Number 10, the pregame hours. These are great if actually you want to maximize your earnings as best you can, but you don't really want to deal with drunk people, right? Because I know a lot of people have this, and I get it. A lot of people have this thing where they're like, I don't want to deal with drunk people. They're just obnoxious. It's annoying. They mess up my car. You know, they might puke in my car. I will say, knock on wood, I've never had anybody puke in my car, but you never know, right? So I do get the appeal of not driving drunk people, but you want to drive during the surges. And I find during the pregame hours, which are, I find, I'm going to say like 5 to 8, 5 to 9. These are the hours where people are not drunk yet. They're not wasted yet, but they're getting ready to be. So they might be taking an Uber or Lyft to go to their friend's place to pregame. They might be going to a given venue to pregame before they go out or whatever the case is. And what's good about this is, let's say it's a Friday. I'll do, let's say, 5 to 7, which is the evening commuting hours, so people are going home, but then I'll continue driving. So I might do then 7 to like 9. So let's say if I don't want to drive around drunk people that night, or let's say I have a DJ gig that night, or let's say I want to go out that night, I do it to about 9-ish, right, give or take, because these are the people, like I said, that are going out. And sometimes the surges can be pretty good. They can actually be sometimes better than later on that night because people are going to be going to their locations before they truly start drinking. And the pregame hours can be a great way to make more money without dealing with drunk people. Number 11, the big commute. This is a huge one that I have to suggest to a lot of people to make more money. If you live in a given area, and let's say you're not in the hot spot of the city, let's say you don't live in the heart of Boston or Chicago, Miami, Los Angeles, the list goes on, I do suggest it is worth it. That let's say if you live, and I'm just making things up, let's say you live an hour from Boston, let's say you live an hour from the heart of Chicago, let's say you live an hour from the heart of Miami, for example, just to give locations, I do think it is 100% worth it for you to do what I call the big commute. Meaning it is worth it to drive an hour to start driving and then drive an hour later. Now, let's say you want to do a marathon day. Let's say you want to do, let's say, Friday from 5 p.m. to, let's say, 3 a.m. So you're hitting the evening commuting hours, the pregame hours like we just talked about, and then the nighttime hours. It might be worth it to, let's say, leave your house at, let's say, 4 p.m., maybe even 3:30. You drive an hour. I know you're commuting an hour, but the hour there and the hour back, that 2-hour round-trip drive, although, yeah, that's more time technically that you're driving, you're going to be making way more money because now you're in a bigger hotspot, a bigger city with a lot more traffic and a lot more surges. This is something I cannot suggest enough to do because you're going to maximize your earnings. I mean, I even know some people, again, because I drove in Massachusetts, who, let's say, would say, hey, you know what? I live in Springfield. Springfield to Boston, you're looking at about an hour and a half. I know some people who said, you know what? I'm going to do that hour and a half commute. Because, yeah, it's an hour and a half commute, 3 hours round trip. It can be exhausting. I'd much rather do that, do the hour and a half commute, because I know that 3-hour round trip drive, even including those hours, I'm going to make way more money driving as much as I can in Boston. One thing I want to say, though, about this, which can be annoying, and you have to look into the terms of Uber and Lyft, because it does depend, but usually gets a little tricky, is if, let's say, you live on a state border. Like, let's say you live on, I don't know, the border of a state that the true city is actually the state over. That can get tricky driving if, let's say, you want to commute into a different state, drive in that state, and drive back. It does depend state to state. This can get kind of technical, can get kind of tricky. So it is definitely something that might be situational. But if, let's say, you're like, hey, Mark, I'm right on the cusp, or right on the line of this one state, and it's a 30-minute drive to this major city, but it's in a different state, I look into it. Maybe even contact Uber and Lyft and see if you can do it, because that alone can make you way more money. Number 12, business cards. This is a random one, but I do want to mention it. That, let's say if you have any other entrepreneurial activities, pursuits, anything that you're doing, to have business cards on you, because I think it's kind of like a meme. Like, I did this video about like things people say in an Uber and Lyft, and one of the top things that people say is, oh, so is this all you do, or do you do anything else besides Uber or Lyft? It's such a common question. Like, I think probably one of the top 3 to 5 most common questions you're going to get from passengers. And that's something I realized pretty early on. And I'd always say to them, like, yeah, I'm actually a DJ and producer. The number one question I get right after that, as you can imagine, if I say, hey, I'm an electronic musician, is they say, hey, what's your music? I want to listen to you. What's your Spotify? What's your SoundCloud, right? And so I realized pretty early on, always have business cards on me that had like my name, of course, my artist name, my social media handles, that kind of stuff. I take one of the cards, hand them, like, hey, check it out. Let me know what you think. This is a great way to kind of promote indirectly. Also, you don't want to shove it in people's faces. So I do always wait for them to ask if they do ask or not. But this is a good way. Let's say if you have, let's say, a YouTube channel you're trying to promote, if you're a TikToker, let's say you're also a musician, let's say you're a painter, let's say you're a writer, like whatever the case is. If let's say you have another thing that you're doing, create a bunch of business cards on like Vistaprint, for example. They're pretty cheap to make. Create a bunch of business cards. And that way, when someone does ask you that question, and most of the time they probably will, and you bring it up, when they say, hey, so you're a writer, cool, can I see where your works are? Or hey, you do actually TikTok videos? What's your TikTok account? You hand them the card, and boom, that's more promotion for what you're doing. Number 13, caffeine pills. These you want to be careful with, I'm going to be honest right away, because one caffeine pill typically has about 200 milligrams of caffeine. This is why I also suggest as a pro tip to have Neuromints. These are one of my favorite products. Absolutely, again, I have them listed below in the description if you want to check them out. The reason why is each Neuromint has only 50 milligrams of caffeine. In case you didn't know, the average cup of coffee has about 80 to 90 milligrams of caffeine. So one typical caffeine pill of 200 milligrams is like double or sometimes 2.5 the amount in terms of cups of coffee. That can be a lot right at once. Neuromints I like more because one, it's a mint, so it helps with your breath. And then two, with these Neuromints, because they only have 50 milligrams, I find that's a lot better. They also have B vitamins and L-theanine. I like Neuromints better personally because it's a lot easier to take one and not be super wired. But what I like about these is one, you can just pop it. Like so you're having a marathon day, you need that caffeine to kind of keep you going. You just have one, super quick, super easy. The second thing, I guess referencing back to bathroom addresses, is as you can imagine, having like say a ton of coffee is gonna make you go to the bathroom more. So by having caffeine pills or Neuromints or some type of mint or something that you can just pop, it makes it a lot easier and quicker to get that caffeine fix in to continue driving. Number 14, have a credit card. Now this one I want to stress. I'm a former accountant, but I'm not your accountant, so I want to stress that. Then when it comes to Uber and Lyft, there are a lot of inevitable expenses. You're gonna have to make money. Actually, you have to spend money. Let me reverse that. You're gonna have to spend money to make money, right? In the sense that you always are gonna be getting gas. That's the most cliche one. You're gonna be getting more maintenance on your car. You're gonna be maybe doing X, Y, and Z. Like there's gonna be just more expenses just when it comes to Uber and Lyft, especially gas being the biggest one. And one good way to kind of kill two birds with one stone, maybe even multiple, is by having a credit card. Because as you can imagine, by having a credit card, even if you pay it off right away, which you should do, I'm gonna stress. If you're the type of person that you see like say a $10,000 limit on your credit card, and you're like, ooh, $10,000 limit. Of course, if you're gonna be going and blowing that, and like say you're gonna be spending irresponsibly, don't get a credit card. I have to mention that. But let's say if you're very responsible, this is a great way to build your credit, right? The fact that like say you buy gas, you immediately pay it off. You buy gas, you immediately pay it off, like say every week, however you do it. This is a great way. And the second thing as well, I will say, is there's gonna be a lot of benefits, and you might get airline miles, you might get points, rewards that you use towards hotels, towards other stuff. As we all know, every credit card's a little bit different. Like for me, I personally have the American Airlines credit card because that's my main airline. I love American Airlines. And so any single time I pay with that American Airlines credit card, I get points that I can use for miles to fly for free. And if you're gonna be getting gas a lot, if you're spending gas a lot, and of course, if you're driving for Uber and Lyft, you are going to be getting a lot of gas and spending a lot of money in gas. Want to get rewards and build your credit on top of that. Number 15, both apps. Just do it. I've said this in so many videos. I'll say it again. I'm not going to talk too much about this. I just posted like a 20-minute video of the 5 reasons why you should drive for both Uber and Lyft and have both apps on your phone. Just do it. Sign up for both and make sure that when you sign up, you get those sign-on bonuses, which I'll talk about a bit later in this video. You get those sign-on bonuses and you have them both on your phone ready to go. There's a lot of advantage to this, as different apps in terms of Uber and Lyft will have different bonuses at different times. Sometimes Uber's paying more, sometimes Lyft's paying more. I've said this before in a lot of videos that when I first started driving, I only signed up with Lyft. I was like, Uber, schmoober, whatever. And I was driving for Lyft and I was like, you know what? I might as well sign up for Uber. Why not? And the second I signed up for Uber, this is in 2015, I realized, wait a minute, Uber's paying more than Lyft. Why'd I ever stick with Lyft? And then I was driving for Uber. And then after 4 or 5 months, I decided to test out Lyft again. And the name of science, test out Lyft again. And I realized, wait a minute, Lyft is actually paying way more than Uber now. And then I went back to Lyft. It can go back and forth. Depending on how and when you drive, maybe Uber pays more on the weekends, and Lyft pays more during the week, maybe vice versa. Maybe in your given city or given area, Uber just pays more or Lyft just pays more. There's so many different factors that come into play, but just at the end of the day, you have a bajillion more advantages and a bajillion more ways to make more money by signing up and being able to drive for both apps. Number 16, hotspots. What I'm talking about is these are places that typically there's a lot of travel and a lot of commotion, and a lot of people that that like say if you're going to go to a given area in your city, this is the place that you want to go to. So a good example is I remember like places like South Station, places like, the kind of the main bus station or hub in your city, Of course, the airport, we all know airport rides are airport rides. They can pay a lot or little depending upon your city. Like I know in Boston, they paid a lot. However, I've heard from Denver, Colorado drivers, if you're in Denver, as we all know, or my Colorado people know, the Denver airport is really, really far from the city, which I'll talk about a bit later in this video. I have a pro tip for you, but pretty far from the city. And so as a result, those are not that good, right? But besides the airport rides, I look at, is there any kind of Union Station, South Station, any kind of big terminal, Central Station? I feel like they're all usually, I feel like most of them are usually that name. But anyway, is there any kind of big hub that there's all these trains, metros, buses, a big commuting hub of one area? Those are usually some of the best surges, and people are always looking for rides. Another thing I've noticed is sometimes those rides can also be a bit further. In case you didn't know, when it comes to driving, the longer that you drive in terms of distances, typically that can equal more money. Not always, but typically. So if I'm picking somebody up, I know that, yeah, they might go to a hotel a second away. But a lot of times, like say if we're picking somebody up in Boston, they might be going a half an hour away, and it might be right on the highway, and I'm racking up those miles. That's a big way to make more money. So think of the hotspots. Any single time, like say you're driving, or like say you're in your city, maybe think like, okay, yeah, I could always go to like this one area, but it's kind of dead right now. But one place I know it's always gonna be hot and popping is just one Union Station in my area, in my main city, because there's always gonna be commuters. There's always people getting into that station that are looking to leave via rideshare, and that's where you come in. Number 17, finish strong. This is a big one because psychologically, as we all know, the first impression is always important when it comes to people, but also the last impression. Because if you think about it, when someone leaves your car, the last thing they think of you when they go to give you a rating is the last thing that you say, the last thing that you do. So I know a lot of drivers have said to me like, hey, Mark, I'm trying to get a 5-star rating. And I will say now, compared to back in the day, most people just give you 5 stars. It's almost like, I remember learning this in psychology, that the lack of comfort, or the lack of discomfort is comfort, not the other way around. In the sense, it's going to sound weird, but just hear me out. If I walk into a room and it's the perfect temperature, I don't think it's a good temperature of a room. You don't think that. But if you walk into a room and it's too cold, you're like, oof, wait, it's really cold. Or let's say I walk into a room and it's too hot. I'm like, oh, it's really hot. You really usually psychologically only notice things when they're like out of homeostasis, or they're out of the norm of what you're experiencing, right? So a big thing I suggest when it comes to this is that at the end of the ride, and like I said, most people give you 5 stars. Unless you mess up, like I said, people only notice when you do something wrong and then they give you a lower star. Most people do start out with a 5-star rating in their head. That being said, just to optimize your ratings, when someone goes to leave the car, I'll just say something like, hey, have a great day. Have a good one. They mention something, I'll be like, hey, good luck with that music thing that you're doing. I'll just give kind of like a nice words of encouragement, because there are having a lot of drivers have hit me up saying, hey, Mark, I want to get high ratings, always, as you can imagine. I want to get 5-star ratings, but how do I do so if someone doesn't talk, right? Like, I think if someone gets in your car, a lot of people sometimes don't want to talk. They just go on their phone, and they're like, how do I get a 5-star rating, though, if I'm not talking? One, again, sometimes that's what people want. So I want to say that. Like, sometimes people don't want a conversation. If you try to push it on them, it might give you a lower rating, actually. 2, like I said, people usually go into an Uber or Lyft with a 5-star mentality. 3, make sure your car is clean. I don't have that as a pro tip on this video, but I got to mention it. Just make sure your car is clean, right? And it smells good. But 4 is that when they go to leave the vehicle, just say something nice. Like, be like, hey, have a good one. Have a great day. Sometimes, like, say if it is a nice day out, I mean, like, hey, have a great day. It's a beautiful day out. Have a good one. Something like that. Number 18, what's the name? This is a big one, I think, especially on Friday and Saturday nights, to make sure you're getting the right person in your vehicle, because it can be a bit mayhem. People are drunk. They're not making the most rational decisions. So let's say someone gets in your car. I don't say like, hey, Amanda, right? Don't do that. Because there's been times where, like, say a girl gets in the car and you're like, Amanda? And she's like, yeah. But it's not Amanda. She's just kind of going along with what you're saying. So I'll be like, hey, what's your name? And she might be like, oh, this is Jessica. I'm like, oh, sorry, Jessica, wrong Uber. And then you wait, and then eventually you'll get Amanda, for example, or Mike, or Tom, or whoever's getting in the vehicle. And this is a big thing, do not say their name right away in terms of being like, hey, Amanda, don't do that. Always ask them for them to say their name. Number 19, the general GPS error. This has gotten better, but it still can sometimes happen. That is this. Sometimes what people will do is if, let's say, they want you to pick them up at a given location, typically it will be their current location, right? As we all know, they won't even type in anything on that top bar in Uber. Sometimes they will, though, right? They might type in like, hey, I'm at this one college, like Harvard. Or they might be, like, say, at a mall. And what sometimes happens that the GPS can glitch up, and you'll kind of learn this pretty quick. I will say GPSs are really good now, and location is pretty good now. But sometimes the point or that pin of where they are is just generalized. Where they're like, I'm at this mall, and when you look at the mall, because, like, say, the reception isn't the best or the service isn't the best, you just see this general dot for this huge mall. And you're like, okay, I don't know exactly where to pick you up. So if I notice this, like, say I can tell it's the general GPS error where the GPS or the point or the pickup is too generalized. Usually it's just in the center of it, given, like, say, something glitching up. I will call them and be like, hey, I noticed you're at this mall. The weird thing, though, is your pin's in the center of the entire mall. Where do you want me to pick you up? And they're like, oh, actually pick me up on the side near the Best Buy. That's actually where I'm going to be. And I'm like, okay, I'll head to the Best Buy then. Or, like, say someone's out of college and it's generalized what's right in the middle of the college and this huge campus. I'd be like, hey, for some reason your GPS shows me you're just in the middle of everything. Where do you want me to pick you up? And this is a good way to find somebody right away and not be driving around aimlessly. Number 20, morning versus evening commuting. This is something I touched upon a bit earlier, and that is this. What I noticed in terms of optimizing my ratings when it comes to the morning versus evening, I'm gonna even add in versus the night. I've noticed that depending on my energy, it can actually be a good thing or a bad thing. Now, of course, this comes down to psychology, reading the person. This is not always true, but I notice that in the morning, people want to talk less. Not surprising. They maybe just woke up. They're going to work. No one's typically happy to go to work unless you love what you do. So I notice in the morning commuting, I find that by having a lower energy is the best way to get high ratings. If someone gets in my car and, like, say at 8 a.m. and I'm like, hey, what's up? Good morning. Like, and I'm super upbeat, that's probably going to throw them off. And I noticed there were even times where, like, say when I first started driving and I didn't know, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to be talkative all the time. I had some people like, hey, man, I'm not going to lie, it's 7:45 a.m., I'm just trying to get to work. I'm not happy about this. I'd just rather a quiet car ride. And that makes sense, right? So I think in the morning commuting hours, a little more low key. Evening, I ramp it up a little bit. Of course, I do feel the person out in terms of, like, their vibe and all that kind of stuff. But I notice that by then matching their vibe, like, say in the evening commuting hours, which is usually more upbeat, I'll make sure to be more upbeat and almost be a different version of myself than the morning, right? As we all know, the morning you is maybe a bit different than the evening you. And then at night, of course, that's going to be way more higher energy. I find at nighttime when I'm driving around drunk people, like I talk about the base adjust as a pro tip, I'll make sure to be way more upbeat to make sure that, like, say, people are in my car, they're having a good time. I find by being more upbeat and almost continuing up that vibe and that energy that they have, I've gotten so many tips, high ratings, a lot of comments as well. People were saying, like, man, this is a great driver. They were bumping music. Their music, like, it was like the cliche, excellent kind of rideshare or car ride that I want to get to the nightclub in a really good mood. Number 21, gas credit cards. Now, I know I talked about credit cards earlier, but I want to make this another separate point just because of how good this one can be. And as you can imagine, like I said with earlier, a lot of benefits of credit cards. The main two is A, because you're spending money anyway, it's building your credit as long as you're responsible. And two, because you're spending money, you might as well get rewards on top of that. And I think one of the best credit cards you can get for Uber and Lyft drivers especially are gas credit cards. Like I said, this is a given gas station in your area that's very, very common that you go to all the time. Not a bad idea to look into this. Again, I want to stress, I'm a former accountant, but I'm not your accountant. Remember, credit cards are a responsibility and a big responsibility financially, but you can get all those benefits of building your credit and getting rewards. And because you're buying gas so much, there may be something saying, hey, if you use our credit card, you get 10 cents off every time you use it. That can add up. Or you get rewards and all this other stuff. Now, I said this does depend upon the person. So I do want to say that for me, I actually liked having my American Airlines credit card and using that because I prefer the miles. But if, let's say you don't really care that much about traveling in terms of getting the miles for an airline or whatever, having a gas credit card, I think if I had to pick one type of credit card, is it a traveling credit card? Is it a general credit card where you just get cash back? Is it a gas credit card, especially for all my drivers out there, because you're going to be spending a lot of money in gas, as we all know. Gas credit card, definitely the way to go. Number 22, AAA. just get it. I want to stress I have no relation with AAA. I've already done a dedicated video about it on this channel. Just get it. I mean, the amount of money that you're going to spend, I think it's like right now maybe like $160 for the premium membership. Just one use of that AAA membership. Like say if your car breaks down, you get a flat tire, you need to get it towed somewhere, you need a jump, whatever it is, just one use can save you a ton of time, a ton of money, I'm going to say, because let's say if you don't have AAA and you get a flat tire and you just switch it and you don't know how, you're talking about wasting hours just to figure that out. With AAA, you call them right away. It is amazing. It's amazing roadside assistance and roadside service. Out of anything I can tell you when it comes to having a car, even if you don't drive for Lyft and Uber, AAA is one of the most important things you can have. Number 23, Eco Mode. This is a big mode now that a lot of cars have, and I might as well call it a feature more than a mode, and that is this. Under the settings of your car, most cars now have what's called the Eco Mode. What this does is it uses less horsepower, less power in general, and drives more efficiently that makes your gas last longer. And this is a huge way to increase your MPG. And at the end of the day, remember that when it comes to accounting and math and finances, at the end of the day, the goal isn't to necessarily make more money, although that is important. You want to have more money, right? And if you're spending less money in gas, that's more money in your pocket. And enabling the eco mode in your car is a great way to do this because as you can imagine, you're not trying to pull something with your car. You're not doing these crazy NASCAR style races. You're just picking up people and dropping them off. And by turning on eco mode, what that allows you to do is use more MPG, have a higher MPG, which means that gas is going to last you longer. So you're going to be spending a lot less money in gas overall. Number 24, hire a tax accountant. I want to stress again, I know I have to say it multiple times, I'm a former accountant, but I'm not your accountant. This is a big one because when you drive for Uber and Lyft, you are an independent contractor. And a part of that is you're going to be doing things like write-offs, right? You're probably not going to be taking a standard deduction. There's going to be different types of expenses you're going to have to be keeping track of. And so the biggest thing I can suggest is make sure you hire a tax accountant. You're looking at about, I'd say for the average tax accountant, when it comes to a simple 1099, that kind of stuff, unless you have some other crazy stuff going on financially or job-wise, you're probably looking at between $200 and $300 to do the taxes. And I'm telling you, that $200 or $300 is going to be way less than you're going to spend if you try to do it yourself. As another pro tip on top of this, or I guess maybe the reverse, don't use tax software. They usually automate things. They do try to make it as easy as possible. And as you can imagine, when it comes to taxes, sometimes there are some gray areas, right? Sometimes there are some kind of tricky things. You're like, well, what about my cell phone? That alone can be a bit tricky. Is it personal or business? Well, technically a combination. So these are things that get kind of tricky and very technical. And this is why I cannot suggest enough. When tax season rolls around, hire a licensed CPA tax accountant. Number 25, Huel. I love Huel. I've mentioned it on a few videos on my vlog channel. In case you didn't know, I have 5 different YouTube channels. On my vlog channel, I've done probably like 30 videos about Huel. I'm obsessed with it. In case you don't know, Huel is basically powdered food. That's all it is. And what I love about Huel, especially when it comes to driving, is A, it's very nutritionally complete, very, very good for you, very, very cheap, and very, very easy to make. Triple win. So if I'm driving, and let's say I'm like in a city and I'm driving, I'm like, oh man, I'm starving, I need some food. What I do is maybe pull over after, let's say, the ride. I'll have water, let's say, in my trunk. Take my blender bottle, put in water, 2 scoops of Huel, shake it, chug it. I just got a super healthy 400-calorie meal right there that actually does fill you up. And I love this because I remember when I first started driving, I'd see the glowing M of the McDonald's or other fast food chains, and I get fast food. Not good for you. It can also add up. I mean, as we all know now, like even McDonald's is now super expensive. I was just at like Carl's Jr., for example, to pick another fast food chain. I got a small coffee, like a normal coffee, and like their smallest burger, nothing crazy, just like a small burger, $10. And I'm like, $10? Shouldn't this be like $2 or $3? Like $1 for the coffee, $1 or $2 for the burger? Anyway, it can add up, right? And what I like about Huel, like I said, is A, super healthy for you. B, super, super cheap. The average cost of one Huel meal, when you look at the powder and like do all the math out, is only about $3.20. Very, very cheap. And then 3, it's super easy to make. It literally takes you seconds to make a quick Huel shake. Think of it very similar to making a protein shake, right? It's powdered food. You chug it, you're on and you continue driving. Number 26, car washes. This is one that I wouldn't think I had to mention, being honest, but I have to. And the reason why is in Boston, when I drove, you didn't really have to think about car washes. I don't know if I ever got a car wash in Boston. I gotta be honest. It rains a lot, snows a lot. Like that's not really anything you really have to worry about, in my opinion. But a lot of drivers forget the initial first impression that they have of you, besides maybe your profile picture, but the initial first impression when they're walking is what the outside of your car looks like. And here in LA, it very rarely rains, as you probably know. And so I notice I get way more car washes here in LA. And as you can imagine, if let's say someone's approaching your car, let's say, especially if you have a white car, and there's all this dirt and grime, all this kind of stuff on the outside, even if, let's say, you're super nice, even if, let's say, the car is super clean on the inside, even if, let's say, it smells good, like say the inside is spotless and perfect, your initial first impression, which, as we all know, goes a long way, is the outside of your car. And if it's looking bad, that's not the way you want to kick off that ride. So let's say if you do live in an area like LA where it doesn't rain a lot, or let's say your car just looks super dirty. I know it sounds like something that seems a bit like Captain Obvious, but I cannot tell you how many times I've had cars pull up to pick me up here in LA that looked horrible on the outside. And I don't care. I used to drive for Lyft and Uber, so I get it. I'm just like, whatever. But I know a lot of people do care. And then if that's that first impression of a dirty car on the outside, not the best way to kick it off. Number 27, tire check. This is one that I suggest to do about once a month. Just check your tires' PSI. Make sure that there's enough air in them. They have found a lot of studies, probably not surprising, that having a very low PSI, or let's say not that much air in your tires, can equate to, let's say, of course, getting, let's say, a blowout of your tire a lot easier. Of course, things like it being dangerous, if, let's say, something goes wrong when it comes to driving in terms of safety. And also, they've also found that actually you might get less gas mileage in terms of your MPG may be lower. So you may be spending more money in gas because your tires are not properly filled up. You can easily go to most gas stations, fill it up for $1 or $2 when it comes to the air. Again, I suggest maybe checking them about once a month, because especially if you're putting in those miles, I think one thing that a lot of people forget when it comes to your vehicle is checking the tires. Make sure you do so. Number 28, AUX Cord. Just get it, especially on Friday and Saturday nights. People really want to hear the music they want to hear, and you can even combine this with the pro tip I said a while ago in terms of the bass adjust. I do suggest an aux cord and maybe even the adapter for iPhones, or the Thunderbolt, or maybe the USB-C adapter. I do suggest having this just because, yes, I know Bluetooth is the thing, and a lot of cars, even now, there are actually some cars that are actually not doing anything with aux cords anymore. I suggest having some type of setup, and the reason why is A, as you all know, Bluetooth can just sometimes not work. B, remember that especially when it's surging, when it's a Friday and Saturday night and it's surging, you make the least amount of money not moving. And it always happens for most cars now. There's a security feature, and I kind of get it, where you cannot add a new device via Bluetooth if you're moving. So what do? You have to pull over, put it in park, you try connecting it. It might take 5 minutes. Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's not. It takes 5 minutes for them to connect via Bluetooth. And then eventually it connects and you keep driving. Yeah, it's only 5 minutes, but if you're doing this, like, say, every ride, because a lot of people do want to listen to their own music, it can be a hassle. With an aux cord, you pass it back, they plug it in, you're good to go. Number 29, idling over driving. Now, this is one that's very important if, let's say, it's a bit of a slower period, and that is this. I have talked to a lot of drivers who, let's say, have told me, like, yeah, Mark, I dropped somebody off, didn't really get another ride, so I'm just driving around waiting for one. Do not do that. As you can imagine, when you're driving, that's putting more wear and tear on your vehicle. You're wasting more gas. And again, some of these seem like Captain Obvious, but I've heard this from a lot of drivers. This is the reason why I'm making this a pro tip. There's a reason why each one of these pro tips is a pro tip, because this is stuff I've learned, of course, when it comes to driving, but also other things that I've seen other drivers do that I'm like, just wait. If, let's say, you drop somebody off, this is what I typically do. Let's say I drop somebody off, and let's say there's no new ride. Nothing popped up. I'm not just going to sit there in front of their house. That's kind of sketchy. But I'll do is maybe I'll pull up a little bit and wait and just idle. I'll just idle my car. I'll wait a little bit. I have heard that if you idle for, like, I think it's like 5 or 10 minutes, that's equal to you turning your car off or on. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure if that's 100% true, but I did read that somewhere, right? But in general, idling over driving if you've not gotten a new ride. Now, yes, both Uber and Lyft, in case you didn't know, has what's called an overlapping feature. Before you get done with a ride, or even during a ride right away, Uber and Lyft will give you kind of a flashing alert saying, hey, here's a new ride, here's a new ride. And the idea is they're trying to overlap it. That way, when you get done with a ride, you already have another one in queue. You have another one lined up. You might even have a big queue of all these rides that are overlapping. That way, you never have to wait for another ride. That being said, if it's slow, whatever the case is, let's say you're just not getting a ride, makes you kind of pull off to the side and idle and wait, makes you safe. And of course, you're not violating any traffic laws, whatever. Makes you pull off and wait as opposed to driving around and waiting for another ride. Number 30, first contact. This one can save you a ton of time, hassle, and a lot more. And that is this. If, let's say, you get into a dispute with a passenger, let's say something goes wrong. Let's say, for whatever reason, you just get into a huge argument, whatever it is. They get out of the car. You want to be the first person to contact Uber or Lyft and notify them about what happened. I think if anything, this is more a psychological thing. It's also a logistical thing because this happens a lot. It's unfortunate. I've talked in a lot of recent videos about deactivation. That lets you get into a dispute with a passenger and out of revenge, out of pity revenge, the passenger says something to Uber and Lyft and they make something up like, oh, my driver is driving drunk. My driver is doing this. And then Uber and Lyft says, oh, shoot, well, we don't want that. We're going to deactivate their account, meaning we're going to make it that they can't drive. Then they contact you and they say, hey, so they told us you were driving drunk. And you're like, wait, I wasn't driving drunk. And now you're on the defensive. Now you're defensive being like, no, this is what happened. This is what happened. You try to tell your side of the story. It becomes a he said this, but she said this situation. Not the position you want to be in. And so I suggest if you ever get into a dispute with a passenger, this only happened to me once actually. Only once I had one lady that was just a nightmare to drive. And I mean a nightmare. I stress the word nightmare. The only bad passenger I've ever had, the second I dropped her off, I contacted Lyft and said, hey, here's what happened. I told them everything in detail. I said, hey, you know what? As you can tell, I mostly get 5-star ratings. I just want to notify you just in case. And then turns out, after I contacted Lyft and sent them this kind of whole email or message or whatever, they got back to me and they said, hey, Mark, we appreciate you reaching out first. She actually did contact us and say that you were doing X, Y, and Z, but I appreciate you being honest because we can tell that actually everything that she said was false and she fabricated a story to get revenge on you or whatever. Luckily, nothing happened and my account didn't get deactivated or whatever. But if, let's say, I didn't contact Lyft first, if, let's say, this lady said all this stuff and they didn't hear from me first, who knows how that could have turned out? So I always suggest any dispute, any potential negative thing that happens with a passenger, always be the first person to contact. Number 31, Febreze. I suggest having this just in case. I don't really think you need a lot of items in your car. I might as well mention that as like a mini side point. You don't need gum or mints or candy or goodies. Back in the day, Uber and Lyft really went hard on that. Now, I don't think you need it. No one really expects it. But there are a couple things you do need in your car or you should have. I think Febreze is one of them. If, let's say, your car smells bad, if, let's say, someone brings food in the car and it smells and reeks of, let's say, McDonald's or In-N-Out or fast food or whatever, just have Febreze maybe in your glove compartment. I also suggest getting the unscented Febreze. I have a link listed below again to that one if you want to check it out and that list of items that I'm mentioning in this video. I like the unscented one more. That way it gets rid of that smell. Maybe you roll all the windows down after turning off window lock, of course, right? Talking about that pro tip earlier. Turn all the windows down, and then as you're driving to pick up the next person, try to air out your car, and then you're good to go. Number 32, top of the morning. What I mean with this one is that, let's say you don't want to drive around drunk people, Friday and Saturday nights, like I said, there are two other, I'm going to call them not fully peak hours, but like secondary peak hours, I'm going to call it that. And that is the pregame hours, like we already talked about, but also Saturday and Sunday mornings. I find these can actually be a really good time to drive. Sometimes the surges are the same, if not higher than a Friday and Saturday night, depending on what's going on. Couple different reasons. One, people are waking up at their friend's place. They crashed there the night before. Of course, they didn't want to be driving to be safe and responsible, so they're Ubering back to their place. That happens a lot. The second thing is people are going out for, like, say, some day drinking sessions, maybe a Sunday fun day. They're going to brunch. They're doing bottomless mimosas. And I find that Saturday and Sunday morning, so I'm going to say like 8 a.m. to, I'm going to say about 1, especially around like noontime. Like I might even say 11 to 1 around that time. There's usually a lot of people ordering Ubers and Lyfts, right? Because they're going out to, like, say, do some day drinking, like I said, going out to brunch, etc., etc. Number 33, reverse destination filtering. This is a great pro tip. Now, I've already done an entire video about huge pro tips regarding the destination filters on both Uber and Lyft, because there's a lot of unique features you can do with the destination filters. This is one pro tip I want to give on this video, and that's the reverse. So I mentioned earlier about the Denver airport, how it's about 45 minutes away. And when I talk to a lot of Denver, Colorado drivers, they're just like, yeah, airport rides in other cities, I get it. It pays a lot, like LAX here in LA, or like, say, Logan in Boston. But the Denver airport, no, it's not worth the money. So what you can do as a huge pro tip, let's say for my Denver drivers out there, to pick one example, is what you do, and this is what I've heard from Denver drivers, is you do the destination filter. And what you do is you pick just Denver proper as the radius and leave it that. The reason why is you're not necessarily trying to drive in Denver specifically. You're almost doing it to avoid the airport itself. And a lot of people use the destination filter, like say when going home. And it makes sense. You're like, okay, if I'm going home and I can get a ride that's kind of on the way back, even better. I'm getting paid to commute back to my house, which I have to do anyway. But another way to use the destination filter is if, let's say there's a given area in your city or whatever that you want to avoid. You're like, I really don't want to have a ride that picks up or gets dropped off there. Use the destination filter to kind of circle in on pretty much every other area besides that area you want to go to. Number 34, Valvoline oil change. I want to stress I have no affiliation with Valvoline. They're amazing though. I'm really happy someone turned me on to them years ago. In case you've never used them, it's super quick, instant oil change where you drive up, you literally don't leave your car, and sometimes the wait can be anywhere between 10 minutes to sometimes 30, depending on what's going on. But I used to go to the dealership, and it would take like 3 hours to get an oil change. Or I used to go to Jiffy Lube, and it would take forever, sometimes a couple hours as well. With Valvoline, the idea is that you drive up, you always stay in your car. So as you can imagine, pretty quick. You pull up, you get an oil change, and you're on your way. And as you can imagine, with you putting in tons of miles and driving a lot with Uber and Lyft, you're going to be getting more oil changes. And I always get my oil changes at Valvoline. Number 35, one of the most important ones on this list, get a dash cam. Just do it. I look at it very similar to insurance, which, by the way, as a side note, you should have auto insurance. I have to mention that, But anyway, I look at a dash cam as insurance. Hopefully you never have to use it in terms of the footage on it, but you have it just in case. And I also suggest getting a three-way dash cam, meaning it films the front of your car, the back of your car, and also the inside of your car with audio. I think the quality, you can use 1080p, you don't have to go crazy with 4K dash cams, but just have something that records those three sections because, as you can imagine, the more that you're on the road, statistically speaking, the more likely you are to get into an accident, even if it's not your fault. Another thing is disputes inside of the vehicle. I talked before about first contact. Let's say you get into a dispute with a passenger, they make something up. If, let's say, Lyft and Uber does contact you and says, hey, this is a battle now, like they're saying this, but you're saying this, you're like, hey, I have the dash cam footage. And I cannot tell you how many people have contacted me after I started mentioning dash cams on this channel saying, hey, Mark, I'm not gonna lie, this dash cam saved me because of this one dispute with a passenger. Or I got into an accident. Even if let's say you're not driving for Uber and Lyft, I got into an accident. And this actually happened to one of my friends, which is kind of unfortunate. She was driving and a lady rear-ended her, right? Wasn't horrible damage, but a bad enough damage where they're like, hey, let's exchange information, everything. And the lady claimed that my friend actually reversed and backed into her. So it turned into the situation of like, wait a minute, like she's saying, no, you backed into me. But my friend was like, no, she hit me straight on. Who's right? And when I went to the judge, because neither of them had proof, the judge said, hey, you know what? Sorry, guys. I can't say exactly who's right or who's wrong here. It's your word against hers. I think both of you just fix your cars on your own, deal with it on your own, right? That's unfortunate. If someone had a dash cam, they could clearly see, oh, no, she drove into me, right? Have a dash cam makes things a lot better. Number 36, dual wielding. Now, I talked before, sign up with both apps. And one pro tip you can use when it comes to using both apps is actually using both apps at the exact same time. There's some pros and cons to this. First thing I want to say is Uber and Lyft knows that people drive for both apps. So you don't have to really worry about like Uber and Lyft saying, hey, we noticed that you're kind of being odd with your app. You don't have to worry about that, right? And here's the main idea. You turn on both apps. You say, hey, I'm ready to drive. Once you get the ride that you want, you accept it. So I accept, let's say, the Uber ride. And then I sign out of Lyft or turn off Lyft. Then I drive. Then when I'm done driving, pull Lyft back up, turn it on. Pros and cons. One thing I was saying in terms of cons, being honest, is mainly two. One is that this can be annoying, can be a lot. And two, you want to be careful about your income. Now, I mentioned before about both apps being very useful, and sometimes Uber paying more, like I mentioned, sometimes Lyft paying more. You want to make sure that, let's say, if you are dual wielding, that over time, you want to make sure that, let's say Uber pays more in your area, but with this dual wielding technique, you're now taking more Lyft rides, that might actually decrease your earnings, even though you're trying to optimize your earnings, right? So keep in mind, if let's say there's a given app that pays more, make sure to favor that one in general when dual wielding. You probably know that, but I just want to mention it. Now, in terms of the pros, though, the biggest thing is if it's really a slow time. I think that's where this really comes into handy. If let's say you're in an area where things are popping off, it's surging and everything, you probably don't have to do this. If anything, this is going to be more annoying, right? In addition, you might make less money if you're picking the wrong app. So let's say in your area, Uber pays more and it's surging, don't even dual wield. It's not worth it at all. But let's say you're in, a very small town, or let's say just for whatever reason, there's no rides at all. By having both apps up, you're like, hey, some ride or a ride in general is better than no ride. Hanging out and waiting and doing nothing is way worse than at least doing a ride, even if it's not the best. So have both apps up if it's, like, say, a slow period or you live in a smaller town. That way, any single time you get a ride for both Uber or Lyft, you're right there. Number 37, Rideshare Insurance. I know a weird jump to now that I'm outside. Somehow when filming these 50 pro tips, I somehow forgot and skipped over number 37, which is ironic because this is one of the most important ones on this entire video. Of course, I have auto insurance. I'm assuming you do, but make sure you also get rideshare insurance because there's been a lot of cases of people driving, they get into an accident, you're driving for Uber and Lyft, and your insurance company doesn't cover you because they did not know that you were driving for Uber or Lyft, or maybe you told them, but they don't actually cover anything rideshare related. In terms of rideshare insurance, there are mainly two ways you can get it. One, go through your company. So call your auto insurance and say, hey, I'm planning on driving for Uber or Lyft. Do you have any policies or programs with ride sharing? Or B, your company might not cover you when it comes to ride sharing, or they don't have a ride sharing policy or an extra thing you can tack on. So you have to go to a second company to get rideshare insurance. You're looking at about anywhere between $6 and maybe $30 extra a month. Trust me, get it. I cannot tell you how many people have commented on this channel saying, hey Mark, I'm so happy you told me about rideshare insurance. I got into an accident. Uber and Lyft covered some of it, but the rideshare insurance covered the rest of it. Or I've had people say, hey, I was driving and I didn't have rideshare insurance. My insurance didn't cover me because of this one accident, even though it wasn't my fault or whatever. And they told me if I did have rideshare insurance, or I told them ahead of time that I was driving for Uber and Lyft, they would have covered me. Just make sure you have all your bases covered when it comes to rideshare insurance, because a lot of auto insurance policies and coverages don't automatically include ride sharing. Number 38, multiple chargers. I suggest this because, as you can imagine, a lot of people want their phone charged, right? This is a big thing. You will be asked this. So I do suggest getting some type of port that you put into your car, 2 different USBs. One, you have your own charger, plugs into your phone, it's always charging. Then you have a second one that's maybe longer. You can find like a long one on Amazon. Again, I have it listed below in the description. You pass it back and they can charge it. Another pro tip on top of this, I suggest getting like a multi-port. You can easily get one of these. Again, I have the link listed below, where it kind of splits at the end. So you plug in USB, and then when it goes to the end, it kind of splits, and you have like the lightning bolt, USB-C, micro USB, etc., etc. That way, depending on basically whatever kind of phone the person has, depending on what it is, you have a port to be able to charge it. Number 39, bonuses and incentives. I've done a lot of videos about bonuses and talked a lot about it. So I'm going to scrape this service here. All I'm saying is this, check them. That's it. Make sure you check them. This is another advantage of having both apps. There are some weekends where Uber says, hey, you know what? We decided if you do 40 rides this weekend, we're going to give you an extra $300. Lyft might do the same thing. There are constantly different bonuses and incentives that are happening all the time. Sometimes it's very random. Sometimes it's seasonal. Sometimes it's around a festival or an event. There's a lot of different ways that this happens, but what I've noticed with a lot of drivers, when people ask me like, okay, you make all these videos, what would you say is a thing that you've noticed from drivers who make a lot of money versus drivers who don't? The biggest thing I've noticed when it comes to drivers who, let's say, don't make that much money or don't complain is they never really check the bonuses and incentives. They just drive aimlessly. They don't check, like say in the Uber app, the different promotions that they have going on and the notifications. They don't check that in the Lyft app. The drivers who really make the most amount of money, I've noticed, not only harp on the bonuses and incentives, but they optimize them. They have tricks. They almost have hacks of how to really kind of squeeze that bonus and do different things to get the most amount of money they can from that incentive. Always check the bonuses. Number 40, the busy area prediction time. This is a great feature when it comes to the Lyft driver app. And like I mentioned way earlier, actually, with number 1 of the events, sometimes I use the Uber app just for a feature, but I'm not actually planning on driving for Uber, and vice versa. What's great about Lyft is when you zoom out, you can see different areas that are busy. And when you click one, you can see a feature on that saying of when that area, they're going to predict that surging time will kind of taper off. And this is excellent because let's say I pull this up. Let's say it's 9:30 a.m. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of want to continue driving. Where's a good area? And I click one and I check that fine print. It will say, yeah, you know what? We're expecting that the busy time right now is going to end around 9:50 based off all our data. Well, I'm like, okay, well, it's 9:30. It's not worth it for me to drive there because it's going to be ending at 9:50. But then let's say I click another area and it says, yeah, the expected, busy time or I wrote this down. What is it called? The busy area predicted is going to end around 11:30 a.m. Well, I'm like, okay, well, that place is way more worth it to drive to because I know that surging in the busy time of people ordering Lyfts or maybe Ubers too is going to be more popping off for a bit longer. And this is a great way to kind of track where you want to go because as you can imagine, even during a morning commuting hour, 7 to 9 a.m., there's certain pockets of your city that are going to be more, like say, surging and pay more money than other ones. There's going to be more areas or certain areas in your city during the morning commuting hours that maybe will kind of taper off around 8:30 a.m., but maybe other areas, just given the layout of the land, may taper off around 9:30 a.m. And this is a great way to look at the data that Lyft has to figure out the best place to drive. Number 41, the only Uber Premiums test. Now, when it comes to the Uber driver app, you can select Uber. Do you want to do Uber Eats? Do you want to do, let's say, Uber XL if your car qualifies? You can click different ones. Uber Connect is another one, right? You can kind of pick and choose which ones you want, which ones you don't want on the Uber driver app in terms of those rides. Now, if you have a vehicle that qualifies for premium rides, let's take Uber XL as just the most simple and most common example, right? Now, you can do with an Uber XL qualified vehicle, Uber XL rides, and also Uber rides. And when a ride pops up, if it's, let's say, both enabled on the app, you can get Uber XL. Now, as we know, Uber XL rides pay more. You have a bigger vehicle, people are paying more for that ride. So one thing you can test out as a way to optimize your earnings is say, okay, on a Friday night, I'm going to enable Uber rides and Uber XL. That way, if an Uber ride pops up, I can do it. If an Uber XL ride pops up, I can pick that too. Then, let's say on another night, you turn off Uber. What you're saying is, I'm only going to do Uber XL rides. This can actually optimize your income. I talked to some drivers, for example, in Vegas who did this. And they said, yeah, they were driving for Uber Black. As we know, when you're doing these expensive rides like Uber Black, for example, not as common and depends area to area, like in a given area in Ohio. Do I think there's a lot of Uber Black rides? Probably not. But in Vegas being Vegas, or maybe even LA, this could be the case. It's a lot. And I had some drivers tell me like, yeah, I disabled all the normal rides. I only do Uber Black rides. The reason why is although, yeah, I get way less rides, those rides pay so much more in general that when I did all the math out, I'm way better off only doing Uber Black rides, even if I get less rides, even if I'm waiting more, because at the end of the day, I walk away with more money. And this could be the same thing with you. Like say with Uber XL, for example, the most common kind of premium Uber feature after the normal Uber, if I'd call it like that. If, like, say, in a given area, maybe you're better off doing both Uber rides and Uber XL. But maybe in your given area, if you only do Uber XL rides, you might make more money. Even if it takes you longer to get rides. Even if you do less rides overall, because you're doing these more expensive rides and you're getting paid more, at the end of the day, you may walk away with, or I might as well say drive away with, more money. Number 42, stagger the signups. This is something that maybe you might not be able to do, and maybe you're too past it, but I want to mention that. And that is this. When it comes to Uber and Lyft, you can get an amazing sign-on bonus. It's anywhere as low as $250, upwards of, I think, $1,600. Make sure you get that sign-on bonus. There's two different terms of the sign-on bonus, and this is very important for this. A, you have to use someone's referral code or some kind of link. So you can Google one, like Uber sign up link, Lyft sign up link. You can ask your friends, maybe ask on social media. I have mine listed below in the description. Doesn't really matter whose you use. You just have to use somebody's when it comes to signing up, some referral code or link. Then there's certain requirements. Typically, it's you have to do a certain amount of rides within 30 days. This always changes for each app. It also varies. So it might say you have to do 100 rides in your first 30 days of driving, but it's all or nothing. If you do 99 rides, and then let's say on day 31, you do that 100th ride, you get nothing. It's all or nothing. I'd say the average driver does about 2 rides an hour. So for 100 rides, you're looking at about 50-ish hours of driving. And this is where I suggest stagger these signups. So let's say if you've not started driving yet, you've not signed up yet, sign up just for Lyft. Look at that sign-on bonus requirement, drive, hit that bonus requirement, then sign up with Uber and then do that. Because I think for some people, maybe watching these videos, when I talk a lot about signing up with both apps, they might sign up or you might sign up right away with both. But if you're trying to get that sign-on bonus for both, and remember, you can get that sign-on bonus for both Uber and for Lyft, you're way better off staggering that. Because if you sign up with both right away and you're trying to hit both those requirements at once, that's a lot of driving to do within 30 days, and it's going to be a lot trickier and a lot more time consuming. So I suggest if you are in that position where you've not really signed up yet, you're still figuring things out, do Lyft or Uber first, doesn't really matter. Get that sign-on bonus, and then get the other one. Number 43, nearby rewards. This is an excellent feature on the Uber driver app that if you click rewards and see the nearby rewards, this allows you to get discounts on things near you. This way, like I said, the goal isn't to necessarily make more money, it's to have more money. And if you're going to be buying something you have to buy anyway, why not get it cheaper? So with Uber rewards, because you're an Uber driver, you can get discounts on gas. You can get discounts on food even. There's a lot of features with the Uber reward system. And what's kind of cool about this is you click it, you zoom out, you can see, oh yeah, this gas station is giving me 10 or 15 cents off a gallon. I'm going to go there to get gas. Or hey, I actually just saw this on my Uber driver app before filming this video, Little Caesars. I get a discount at Little Caesars. So let's say if I want to get pizza, let's say I don't have Huel on me like I talked about earlier, I can get Little Caesars. There's a bunch of rewards within the Uber driver app. Number 44, expenses tracking. This comes down to accounting. I'm a former accountant, but I'm not your accountant. I know I've mentioned that like 4 times on this video, but I definitely have to mention it here. Here's the big thing I'm going to say. You have to ask yourself, if I'm buying something, is it in the ordinary and necessary? Those are the 2 main words I'm going to say. The ordinary and necessary course of my business, in this case being a driver. So if let's say you buy a phone charger and you buy that second phone charger for the primary purpose of people being able to charge their phone in your car, that's a tax write-off. Keep that receipt. If let's say you're buying, I don't know, a Spotify premium membership and you're like, hey, I am just doing so to have music that doesn't have ads for people in my car, that might qualify too. Any single time you buy something and in the back of your mind, you're like, this is for Uber. If you buy Febreze, of course, it's for driving, right? Any single time you buy something that relates to you driving, make sure you save the receipt. This is why I also suggest talk to a tax accountant, because that way you can talk to them and say, hey, you know, I bought this Spotify premium membership. Sometimes I use it on my own, but most of the time I use it when driving. Can I write that off? And they'll be able to help you out with these calculations. But basically, any single time you buy something and your first thought or your main reason for buying it is that you're going to be driving and you're mainly using it for Uber and Lyft, make sure you save that receipt. Number 45, off and peak. What I mean with this one is if let's say I pull up the Lyft app, let's say I look at that feature like I talked about earlier, I'm like, hey, it's going to be surging for the next 3 hours based off their prediction. What I do is I turn off the app, drive there, and then turn it on. Now, yes, you can do that thing that I've done before where let's say as you're driving, you just keep having those rides pop up, you keep canceling them or ignoring them. Then when you finally get a good one, you can. But sometimes, and it does depend, some bonuses and some incentives do have some acceptance rates where they say, hey, you have to accept 90% of rides or whatever. This is the main reason why I like turning off the app completely. So what I do is I pull up the apps. I don't even have to, by the way, sign in case you didn't know. You can use this feature on Lyft. Let's say how long it's going to be surging for. You can use it without hitting go, without starting and signing on. So what I can do is look at both the Uber driver app and Lyft driver app, use these features. I have a couple videos listed below in the description to different Uber driver app and Lyft driver app hacks you probably didn't know. So use those features, figure out the best place to drive right now, turn off both apps, go to that area, and then turn on the apps. Number 46, napkins. Pretty straightforward, pretty self-explanatory. I can't tell you how much napkins, or I might even say paper towels as well, has come in handy. Just with people having food or drinks or whatever it is in the car, like say something spills or whatever, just have some type of item like napkins or paper towels. This is going to save you a lot of hassle. Number 47, item check. This is a great one to especially combine with finishing strong, like I talked about earlier. Like say someone's about to leave and say, hey, have a great day. I would turn on the light, especially at nighttime, actually. This is more during the nighttime, I think, if anything. But let's say if it's day or night, depending on what's going on, I'll turn on the light, like say it's night, and I'll look back and I'll say, hey, did you get everything? And I'll scan. This does two things. One, it does give you a higher rating, I find. Let's say if I'm like, hey, I hope you have a great day. Wait, let me just turn on the light for you. Make sure you have everything. Make sure you have your cell phone and your wallet, your keys, etc. That's just, I think, a nice gesture and can equal a higher rating. The second thing, which actually I find the better part of this, is that way you don't have to return their cell phone. There have been times, let's say someone left their cell phone in my car and I had to go and find where they were. Their friend was calling me. I had to, hope their phone didn't die. I had to figure out a way to use your phone because it's passcoded. And then they're like, hey, I can meet you in 2 hours in front of this one grocery store. And I'm like, all right. And then I drop it off. Now, I would say sometimes the person might give you $20 and be like, hey, man, here's $20. I really appreciate it. Thanks for dropping off my phone. Other people just say, hey, thanks. And then that's it. So it is kind of annoying that sometimes, if let's say you're doing a good deed by returning someone's cell phone and you're going out of your way to do so, that's more time on you, and sometimes you don't get paid for that. So if anything, this is a win-win. It's a win for you because, of course, you can get a high rating by doing this, and also you don't have to worry about returning stuff. But it's also a win for them because, of course, the worst thing is you're going out on a Friday night, you're with your friends, you leave your phone in that car, and now you don't have a phone for that night. Not a good position. Number 48, inspection swap. This is a cool pro tip. So when it comes to Uber and Lyft, in most areas, you have to get your car inspected once a year by a licensed mechanic. It makes sense. They just want to make sure your car is running in good condition, that your car is safe for you to drive, and also safe for other people to be in it. And there's an inspection form. So they'll check like tires, brakes, etc. And then they will put pass. Now, on some inspection forms, it says Uber at the top. Other ones, it says Lyft. And what happens is both apps accept the other one. This is good because I can see a lot of people being a bit worried, being like, oh, shoot, I have this Uber inspection form and it says Uber. I can't submit that to Lyft. I don't want them to know. Uber and Lyft, like I said, A, they don't really care if you're driving for other apps. They kind of assume it, if I had to be honest. And B, under the fine print, they do accept these inspection forms from other ride-sharing companies. So like say you get your car inspected once, you're looking at spending between $20 and $40, depending on what's going on. You get it inspected once, and like say you have the Uber driver inspection form. You submit that to Uber, of course, they accept it. You could also submit that to Lyft, or vice versa. Number 49, Teslas. Now, I've done an entire dedicated video about this, so I'm gonna give you kind of the short answer when it comes to this. If you are renting a car to drive for Uber and Lyft, look into renting a Tesla. Here's kind of the pros and cons. Big con, just to tell you, is going to cost more money, right? I'd say on average, most people spend between $200 and $300 a week to rent a car in general. With Teslas, it's probably between $300 and $500 a week. So you're going to be spending way more money to rent that Tesla. So I have to stress, if you are renting a car, look into the fine print, look at the terms. Also, you kind of have to drive full time, right? Because if let's say you drive a ton, let's say you don't drive a ton, you're driving only part-time, it's going to take you a lot longer just to break even. Never mind making money, right? But just to break even, let's say it's $500 a week with that Tesla. That being said, they have found in studies, and this has been very anecdotal evidence too, people's experiences, that by renting that Tesla, even though it's way more expensive, if you're like, hey, I'm going to rent a car anyway, by renting that Tesla and spending that extra money, you make way more money. I've heard this from a lot of LA drivers too. Maybe this is also dependent upon where you live. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know exactly. But let's say here in LA, I know a lot of drivers that I've interviewed who rent Tesla say, yeah, I'm spending, I used to spend $250 a week to rent this Honda Civic. Now I'm spending $450 to rent this Tesla. Even though it's $200 more, I make so much more money because I'm driving full time with that Tesla that is 100% worth it. This could be something to look into. Number 50, analytics. This is my biggest pro tip when it comes to make more money. By far is analytics. For me, again, I've talked before about being an accountant a bajillion times in this video, so I know that might get annoying, but I do want to say this, that when I started driving, and the more that I drove, I actually had like an Excel spreadsheet. I know, an accountant thing, but I had an Excel spreadsheet and I tracked when is the best time to drive? How is the best time to drive? Are Friday nights actually that good? Is Uber better on a Friday night or is Lyft better? Is there a difference between Uber and Lyft on the weekends or weekdays, right? I was testing all this out, and the best pro tip I can give you, which I know sounds like a bit of a vague or ambiguous one, is track your analytics. Every single time you drive, try to figure out the most optimal time, the most optimal way. This is a great way to significantly, and I stress the word significantly, make more money. Because with all these pro tips I've given you, in some cities, in some areas, some of them might hit really hard, some of them might not. And your goal, and I think my goal when it comes to driving, is to test out everything as best I can. This is how I discovered the pregame hours. This is how I discovered these Saturday and Sunday mornings, or top of the morning, as I call it. Like, these are the different ways that I figured out all these more optimization strategies. And like I said, if I just drove aimlessly, I probably would not make as much money. But because I was so focused on the analytics and also combining the analytics of general driving with the bonuses and incentives, the biggest way to make more money driving is look at everything, test out a lot, and pick the best, most optimal times to drive. And now a bonus tip. Could not finish off this video without a bonus tip: referrals. Now, in case you didn't know, like I talked about earlier, of course, when you sign up, you may have already done so, unfortunately, but when you sign up, you can get a big bonus. But also, the person who referred you also gets a big bonus. And this could be a win-win for you. Let's say one of your friends wants to sign up with Lyft. You can say, hey, use my code. You make money. I make money. It's a win-win. Because in case you didn't know, if someone signs up with Lyft and Uber via the site, they get nothing. No sign-on bonus. I've mentioned this before in a lot of videos, and I know it may be a bit redundant for some of my dedicated subscribers, but I want to mention it so it doesn't happen to you. When I signed up for both Uber and Lyft, I literally went to like uber.com, lyft.com. At the time, they were doing a $1,000 sign-on bonus. And guess how much I got? Nothing. Because I went to uber.com. If I just Googled a code or got my friend's code or whatever, I would have gotten $1,000. In that case, probably about $2,000 because signing up with both apps. This is a big thing I suggest. So, like, say, even on your social media, saying, hey guys, if you're looking to sign up for Uber and Lyft, and a lot of people are right now because Uber and Lyft is truly the best secondary job because it's so flexible. And if you think of it, with the economy, with the way things are going, a lot of people are looking for secondary jobs. So easy with Uber and Lyft, with all these different things like low barrier to entry. You just need a driver's license and a car. You can even rent one, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, I suggest maybe on social media saying, hey guys, if you're going to sign up, use my code. You'll get a bonus if you hit the requirements. Maybe if, like, say, people are going to be signing up, text it to your friends, whatever the case is, because the amount that you can get is usually very equal to the amount they're going to get. So you could randomly wake up and be like, whoa, I just got an $800 bonus because one of my friends clicked my link, they signed up, and they drove. Put your referral code everywhere. Put your sign-up code, your referral link, as many places as you can.